Hello, my name is Dominic. Very quickly, I've had MS for 31 years. I am the outlier in the data set, I guess, because I'm not as bad as I thought I was going to be 31 years ago. And I have only relatively recently got into what I would call advocacy. And I'll try and keep my language down, but it really pisses me off that the equality of opportunity in the UK differs so much. And the reason why it is, I think, the issue is about people, psychological. Not you, not me. I'm expecting, if I've pitched up at the hospital with MS and I'm brand new to all this and I'm not used to going to hospitals, I'm not used to dealing with doctors, which I happen to be because I used to have a job which is, and you just realize they've gone to school and studied something different from you for a lot longer, but they've still got flaws like anybody. It must be overwhelming and intimidating. You've just had the rug yanked out from under your feet. And there's a lot available. We're talking about HSCT today. But even if we talk about high efficacy treatments, I'm pretty platform agnostic. I'd much rather you got a high efficacy treatment than a low efficacy treatment. And we could debate whether that's HSCT, which I think is a good thing to offer, but either way, I'd rather have a better drug than a worse drug, broadly. Some of the doctors, there's an NHS treatment algorithm, and it's it. That again is BS because it's guidelines, and as my doctor said to me, clues in the word guide. It's not a speed limit, it's not the law, it's a guide, and there's no drug police that kick in the door and put the doctor on the desk and go, why'd you do that? Yeah. But it's just very much, we have to understand about the issues. Neurologists used to be more, and this isn't an armchair profession, in the sense that they tended to take referrals from other specialties. Can you help me understand my patient's having issues? And it's all of a sudden in the last 20 years, certainly with MS, neurologists have the ability or capability, should we say, in terms of drugs, to treat patients. They have to interact with you. And if you think about the consultants of today, you grew up as a neurologist managing patients' decline with MS, yeah? You've got MS, sucks to be you. I've got to manage your decline now. And these days you have the capability and the technical stuff to intervene and change the outcome. HSCT being the obvious biggest one. But if you think of it as a chronic condition and not as acute in the beginning, and some of you may have seen this, Time is Brain. I think of MS as a vandal. Just because I got diagnosed today doesn't mean it wasn't there. It's vandalizing your brain every single day. It's damaging us. And that damage is generally, you can't turn the clock back. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. Yeah? And most of the people that treat us, most of the people are not going to experience what we are. If I'm your neurologist, the chances of having to look you in the eye in 20 years' time, as you will towards me, and ask myself, I wonder if I could have possibly advised that patient differently, doesn't happen. No, I'm a doctor. I'm doing my best. I'm following the guidelines. Can't be sued following the guidelines. Because you can't come for somebody who's just followed the guidelines, even if it's neurologists are not measured on our outcomes. Does anybody here know how neurologists are measured in the UK? I'm going to take a punt. Bingo, throughput. Yeah, you're only going to get called up, and if you're a consultant or a professor, your bosses are going to have a hard time having that chat with you anyhow, even the medical director of the hospital. But it's how many people you can get through the doors. Guess what? Oh, we're only doing phone appointments now. I had a neurologist who said, no, I like to see them face to face. And I thought, fantastic, but that's rare. Healthcare professional, everyone's happy with HCP. Healthcare professional. Like I said, they used to watch and manage your decline. Sucks to be you. You've got MS. I'll try and make you as comfortable as possible on the decline. Risk aversion. Who's taking the risk with HSCT? Us, with any drug. I don't get. Neurologists. Have you seen a neurologist who hasn't got a PhD? They're the chess club of medicine. They're the kids that asked for more homework when we all went out to play. Yeah, they are really brainy. That's a great thing in many ways, but they're generally not the sort of risk takers. You know, you talk to oncologists, it's different. Magic Kesme, I think, was talking about, oncology. Yeah, HSCT, for example, is all the neurologist is doing is going, there you go, referring you over. But they've still got this thing, it's like they're not taking the risk. I mean, all of us, you look around, it used to just be pictures of wheelchairs. Thankfully, not so much these days. But when I was diagnosed, my brother and I sat down and designed a wheelchair for me because I thought I'm going to be stuffed. But they're risk averse. This is the other thing. I was saying they're clever. When you're clever and you're down that end anyhow, it's really hard to think that you're bad at something. And explaining risk, and this is researched. I went to a small university down south, but somebody else there has made a book with Gerd Gigerenzer, who's a German mathematician, and Muir Gray, and it's called Better Doctors, Better Patients, Better Decisions. And it's an academic book. It's just lots of different papers published together. Doctors generally are, it's a technical term, crap at explaining risk because they don't understand it themselves. And if I don't understand something, but I've got a sort of power relationship, it's quite easy to bluff you a bit. Yeah, because you're looking at me. Remember, you've never been to a hospital before. You've never been in this. You're not the Dominics of the world. You're somebody else who's just going, holy crap, what's happening? And you pin your ears back. And the doctor's telling you this and that, and you're just going, okay. It's an inability to explain the risk in context because research has shown that if a doctor helps you through the risk discussion, you'll make a better decision in the sense of one that you're happier with, that gives you better outcomes generally. I mean, I'm about data. I don't do the fluffy stuff, maybe as much, I'll call up Indu if I need, but it's, I'm less of the fluffy and more of the research. I mean, I was in Sheffield doing an MSc in research methodology about 4 years ago. So I'm loving being back up north. Yeah. Oncology, the immediacy of this. How many patients have you heard of that have been sent away, come back in 3 months? Somebody told me recently, his neurologist said to him recently, come back when you're falling over. What kind of bastard does that? It's just like when you're falling over and you've suffered irreversible damage to the point where you're falling over. And this is happening all the time. And as a patient running a patient channel, people tell me this stuff that they don't obviously tell their doctors. It drives me insane. I'm like, why don't you tell them? But this whole, the amount of people that are handed leaflets and told to go make a decision. It's a complex condition. Neurologists, PhDs, you decide. You can go check the MS, the MS Trust decision tool. You can look at that. Nobody talks about the clinic speak one that Gavin Giovannoni did with because that's more, should we say, pragmatic and taking into account lifestyle. But the whole thing is just, why should the burden of decision making of something so complex just be entirely put on you? It's I'd argue that many people aren't mentally equipped to it. I don't know if it's because I just feel thick as a plank sometimes. It's like, yeah, whatever. And but some people really take it to heart, more so, because we're all wired differently. But why should that poor bloody person just be told to make your mind up? And you're coming back and you're looking. Who wouldn't look at the leaflets and go, well, that one looks a lot safer than that one? And there's nothing in context about, it's beta interferon, it's 30% effective. And, it's but no one's saying, I want to talk to you about 10 years, 20 years, 30 years time. Yeah, and really, if you think about it, that's what you ought to be medicating for. Just out of interest, has anybody here been asked by their doctor what their goals are in life, what their goals are, their 10, 20, 30-year goals are as a patient, as an individual? You've just had your life turned on its head because I've told you you've got this chronic, degenerative, incurable disease. What do you want to achieve in your life? Yeah, I mean, was it in a context if I need to know this to help, decide something, so I can say to you, well, let me lay out a couple of different drugs and this, for example, let's say, females, do you want to have children? Yeah. If you want to have children and you want to have HSCT, freeze your eggs. If you're a man, freeze your sperm. It's one of those things. Even alemtuzumab, I had alemtuzumab. But I'm long enough in the tooth that it wasn't an issue. My daughter's 21, and frankly, any more would frighten the crap out of me and ruin my sleep. So it's and this was the best thing. I was on a call with the neurology academy, and there was a nurse, and I said, "Oh, I don't want to scare them." It's like, that's your bloody job, not to take delight in scaring them, but you at least ought to impress upon them the immediacy and the urgency of this, because the sooner we act, and we've seen multiple presentations, the data's there, the sooner you act, the better the long-term outcomes. The sooner you have a high efficacy therapy, the better your long-term outcomes are. And it's not about next week. It's about 2 decades from now. Has anybody ever seen Aaron Boster, the American doctor? He's got a YouTube channel. Yeah, so he's a friend of mine. He's the one who talked me into starting the channel. And Aaron says to them, I want you to leave the room, and I want 60-year-old you to come back. And I want to know what you want to have achieved by the time you're 60. And that's going to affect how we approach your MS now. It's a sort of we thing, not how we, how you've got a part to play in this. You don't get a magic pill which just makes it go away. Here, it's cancer. I don't want to worry you. That's a famous thing. But 50% of cancers are curable. What percent of MS is curable? Nil. But 50% of cancers are curable. But why is cancer such an emotive word? What other word do you think gets associated with cancer? Death. Precisely. Death. Let me ask you, just as a collective thing, when's the right time to die? Yeah, when is that? Yeah, okay, but it's, I can tell you, the most I can tell you is probably not tomorrow, because I like to get my affairs in order, but I don't know if I'm going to be run down by a truck when I, go back to that, so you kind of got to accept, but it's just, but MS suddenly cancer marches this specter of death into the room and sort of sits down there, and there's not a conversation in oncology that goes, come back when you can feel the tumors under your skin, or you're throwing up or falling out, but until then, don't want to scare you. Take it easy. It just does not happen. It just, but they don't talk to each other. There's no crossover. You don't get MS nurses or the MS medical side of things going, let's see what we can learn from oncology. How do you have these hard conversations as a nurse, as a doctor, with a patient? Because you're not going to die, but your life is going to deteriorate and deteriorate and deteriorate. Yeah. But come back when you're falling over. I'm like, I would have been across the desk, it's like all civilized behavior would have gone. Excuse me. But it's just astonishing. But you wouldn't know if the doctor said, come back when you're falling over. You're like, yeah, okay. Most of us have a relapse and then feel better. And then you're sitting in front of the doctor going, what's wrong? I don't feel bad. Very few of us just go straight downhill from the get-go. Yeah. So this is my acuteness. What we need to do is have doctors see MS, certainly in its initial presentation, as an acute thing. If we all had heart attacks, it doesn't matter how good or bad our doctors are, we're being treated to a protocol. That doesn't happen with MS. There's an NHS treatment algorithm, but there's no protocol. And I can tell you, because I've been looking at the data, because it's public, but they don't publicize it, if that makes sense. I've been looking at NHS data, and you're just looking at drug use. Southampton, for example, prescribes double the amount of cladribine of anywhere else in the UK. Go figure. I mean, you start knocking out things with data, so you start looking at things like, so let's say they don't have any infusion capacity, etc. So they're getting people onto cladribine. But ultimately, it's a highly effective immunoreconstitutive therapy, cladribine. You could just as easily be prescribing Tecfidera to people. So there's a reason why. But the fact is, if you get it in Southampton, lucky you relatively, and a friend of mine who's a doctor was diagnosed with MS recently and got cladribine out of the gates in Southampton. And I said to them, has it affected how your patient care? And she looked at me and said, I've got 2 stroke patients who cannot understand why I'm so nice to them. And it's like all of a sudden you're on the other end of the telescope. So that's a protocol for treating. That's the really important thing that we lack, and it was kind of touched on there. Magic Kazmi was sort of alluding to it. I caught the tail end of his talk. Okay, so it's just one more thing. I heard this the other day from a friend who's an engineer, and I thought, yeah, spot on. Who knows what hyperbolic discounting is? We've all sat there shopping online, and it said, you put 3 more pounds in your cart, you'll get free delivery. That's hyperbolic discounting, because you think, free delivery, awesome, it's £3.95. And you end up spending another tenner to get free delivery. I got free delivery, screwed the bastards, didn't pay a thing for delivery, and they're going, I got another tenner out of that mug, and it's things it's our reptile brain. We all make decisions for the short term, and long-term consequences are not such a big thing. Yet, this is MS. You look at the leaflets, you speak to the nurses or whatever, and this annoys me. Many nurses are good, but some nurses are like, oh yeah, no, you don't want that. One of them told me it's like chemical Drano. I'm like, bring it on. Sounds great. But it's, I want something to I want to poison it, kill it, make it go away. And she's going, you don't want that. It's chemical Drano. And Drano being a North American thing, it's a drain cleaner essentially, but it's this is who's taking the risk. Is it explaining context, and through whose lens is the risk being examined? Is it the person who's sitting there, who's facing the rest of their life, the debilitating disease? And guess what? You don't know how it's going to go. I was modeling wheelchairs, and like drawing them up, with it. I'm just, say you're lucky. I'm like, it's a relative term, but it's we just don't know how it's going to go. That's my view. That I feel like that's a sort of slightly structured rant, but please ask me questions. I could talk at you and listen to the sound of my own voice, but it's not what it's about. Ask me questions, or don't. I could pick a volunteer. Alemtuzumab, I finished my 2nd round this March. So then you get your 1st round, which is 5 days, a year previously. So I had it at Bart's. It really hacks me off that if you get MS in Preston or MS in Southampton, your long-term outcomes are going to be fundamentally different because of the approach that you're treated. The deal with you and make you go away because it's throughput. Ultimately, yes, but I've got to say, I was really rubbish at engaging with MS. I was diagnosed at 23, and the guys in here, and that's 3 of us. You're not going to die when you're 23. Yeah, you're a young man. You're unbreakable. You can do anything you like. Turns out that, I now have, as my daughter measured for me helpfully once when she was 12, 76 centimeters of surgical scars, trying to die, doing dumb things. But it's just, I broke my femur on a bicycle, and it's all bolted back together. I can't walk. I mean, I can walk better now, but I can't run. I look like I'm trying to pick up sailors. It's not a good look, but it's that suddenly made me realize as I remember I distinctly trying to bolt across the road one day and then thinking, stop, you're going to get flattened by the cars, because you could dart between them. And that gave me the insight into what it's like to be disabled. And all of a sudden I started engaging with the MS stuff more. But I've only really been engaging, George Pepper, who I know, who runs Shift.ms, he started, he's been in the field a long time, but I don't have the same pedigree as George. But I have a background in business. I've had a company before. I've worked in the dot-com boom. I've worked in sales. Essentially, I don't mind sticking my chin out. There's a difference between being assertive. It's not aggressive to be assertive. Aggressive is different. But the Brits generally don't do assertiveness. They generally think. I mean, I can see the Canadian nod in their head, because it's just like, I want people to be assertive, but I can't make you assertive. But most trials are on there if they're of any significance. You can search it by condition. You can search it by location. It's a government website. It's not like super sexy. It's not like going onto Amazon and finding what you need. Yeah, it takes a little bit of oh, okay. So it's not a user-friendly thing, but it works. But bear in mind, most teaching hospitals have a research team. So at Oxford, for example, there's a clinical research team. There is a lot of sort of local stuff running. I've been on so many trials, like exercise trials and all this kind of, because I'm happy to do it, because I'm interested to find out the outcome. And then there's trials. Take Sysmus, which is looking at an adjunct therapy for MS, so as well as the DMT. If you've got cancer, let's say you've got non-Hodgkinson lymphoma, you could be on a cocktail of 5 drugs. MS is just one drug. They don't do this. So Sharmini Nanapavin, who's a consultant at Barts, is trialing a drug called Exosumab, which is another repurposed cancer drug, like most MS drugs. And think of it as a school teacher that's getting all the naughty kids out of school at the end of the day, going, all right, now, because there's B cells on the wrong side of the blood-brain barrier. And this is sort of mopping them up and saying, right, lads, out you go. It's a school shot. Anybody who's on natalizumab, that works. It essentially puts this lock around the brain. I mean, the risk with PML, JC virus, is somebody's, it's like a ladder and somebody's tunnel in the bottom. But providing you can keep a monitor on that, natalizumab's done that. That was how it was explained to me by a professor. And I'm happy to go with those kind of descriptions, because science is a little bit sciencey. Well, what I've learned is essentially to affect policy change, there's sort of 4 things on a matrix. There's the medics, the politicians, the patients, and the patient societies. So it's almost like those stars have to align. I know I'm finishing, so but it's just those stars have to align. Broadly, let's play pretend. We've got a year of these useless shower people in government now. It's about a year. Then you're going to have them come in. Wes Streeting will be likely the health minister when Labour, let's say, manage to do something spectacularly dumb, lose the election. So you're going to have about 2 years before they'll be receptive to actually pitching this, because this is a discussion we've had. Because why shouldn't it be like? Why shouldn't the guy in Preston just be given a list? I don't care if he's a crap doctor or not, to do this, do that, do the other. Yeah, exactly. The fact that somebody like you says no, and you've got a mum who's going to stick up for you and do that kind of stuff. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are just, oh, okay. Why would you? Here's somebody who's super qualified, and there's little old me, and I've rocked up, and they said, go away and come back in 6 months. Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah.